Can I
Yes.
get amen?
Amen.
Who
It
do
is
we got
very,
with us
very
today, my
important.
friend?
Ladies and gentlemen, so many people with the COVID and other things have been going through so many mental problems and mental disorders, trauma, which stems from many times our childhood. We have a gentleman who is an expert, a trauma expert, and he is going to help us with some mental help. And you know, people in the church, for so long we want to sing and dance and shout over everything, but we need to go to a professional to get some help. And yes, God will answer every prayer, God will heal and deliver, but He also gives us common sense to go to professionals. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have a gentleman who has been seen on OWN, A&E, NBC, Fox, and CBS. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Wake Up Morning Show. Dr. Cory George. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for having me.
It's an
I'm just
honor to have you.
yeah, I'm just back from celebrating a wonderful Labor Day slash 50th family thing for like the last 4 days. So my family loved on me, and I'm just trying to sit here and recover and do my good work. So
You just turned 50 years old, right?
yeah, September 1st. Yeah, and and it's wonderful to be in a still be 50 and still be open towards enlightenment, and that age is not the thing that closes your door.
That's right. That's
You
right.
close your door, and
That's right.
sometimes we close the door thinking it's protection, but it's actually more like restriction. And so we can talk about that later, but always know that when you close the door, sometimes it can be for protection, but you have to know whether it's for protection and or restriction, and both of them can be worked at the same time for the right reasons. You just have to know why.
That's right.
Well, everybody, the couch is open.
Come on.
We getting ready to get in here with
Yes.
Dr. Cory. If you got some questions or some things that you want to just throw in the chat, we're gonna ask them the question. And I guess I'll start off with myself. Dr. Cory, me and my co-host have been having some rough times.
What co-host? Don't you start today? No co-host had
and
no
and,
problems with
and
you.
and he's in denial of our rough times. I've been trying, Dr. Cory, to get him to have his song list together
Okay,
when,
true.
when he walks in the door, and he has had a relationship with his phone more than he had a relationship with getting this playlist. Could you help us?
I mean, I always say I got to hear it first. I got to hear what it is first.
Do I give my spiel?
Yes, you give your spill.
Well, many times I have a lot of songs playing in my head, and when I get here, so many things take precedent over that. So sometimes I'm not prepared mentally to give you the song list.
Doctor, I think he hearing voices.
I hear voices, all music. I hear music in my head all the time. I'm a singer. I'm on a radio show. It just comes natural.
One of the things I always laugh because when people see us and they see us go back and forth, they be like, "Oh, they having an issue," but
Nah.
it's our way we communicate, and it's
Yes.
funny to us because folks don't see it. How would you, you know how they talk about love languages and things that other people might not understand. How do you keep people from impacting your relationship? And what does healthy relationships look like?
I think so let me answer the second one because I think that when people have either been traumatized or they have a lofty expectation of that, a healthy relationship does have arguments. But it also sets boundaries for how those arguments happen. Meaning, we can play in this field, but once we cross this, we either shut it down or we have to come back later and do it. So healthy for me means you have healthy skills of coping, healthy skills of relating, healthy skills of also conversing, and healthy skills of showing up as your most authentic self. And I feel like the most authentic self is always that goal. I don't believe that anyone ever reaches that until you die, but it's an active process. So you don't get married and say, "Oh, this is how I'm going to be,"
Hmm.
and me having been married and divorced. One of the biggest lessons I've learned for myself is because I'm always ambitious, I'm always growing for self. I expect my mate to also grow. So when people change, I'm going to expect you to.
Hmm.
If so, that means if my partner or spouse is changing, I expected that. But now the issue is what type of change is it?
Hmm.
Because if we're in this 5 years and you haven't changed anything, if you haven't gone towards a goal, if you haven't gone towards anything that first grows you, Because when you grow in yourself, that grows us. Now, outside of any type of injuries or any type of financial issues that doesn't allow that, I'm always thinking I'm looking forward to falling in love with you over and over again
Hmm.
because there's a new layer added, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So for me, healthy just means healthy.
Hmm.
Yeah. So like if you have a healthy lifestyle, but you fall and hurt yourself, a healthy person would know to make sure that. Well, but the first question is, do I need to go see a doctor, or can I handle that on my own?
Right.
Hmm.
A person with a slightly unhealthy mindset may have a stigma towards going to see doctors, right?
Hmm.
Hmm.
So they try to nurse it on their own, and it gets worse.
Yeah,
So
I
true.
was I was laughing because in my earlier part of the marriage, my wife, I was going through trauma with my wife because every time that we would have a heavy discussion, she would get quiet and she
Hmm.
would just look at me and she was like, "Are you finished?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm finished." She's like, "Are you sure?" And she would say, "I said yes." And then she would go upstairs and close the door. And then I realized that she was going to tell Jesus on me and everything. So we started. So there was one time we were having a heavy discussion, and I got at the bottom of the staircase. And the minute that she said, "Are you finished?" I said, "Yes." And she said, "Are you sure?" "Yeah." I went upstairs and went into her prayer closet. I said, "I'm gonna tell him first."
I'm gonna get you.
And it became so funny to us because how we worked through disagreements was we then had to consult the Lord of how to go to those next steps with one another. How do people that might have been traumatized in their life, how do you teach them to have healthy relationships when they're still dealing with the trauma that they never dealt with?
Well, I think first they have to learn. Well, in most cases, if you're dealing with the trauma, it's going to change how you look at relationships.
Mm-hmm.
So most likely they're just coping. They're just building a life around it. Meaning, so we won't touch this area because it's a trigger. So let's build everything around it so the way we can protect. So basically, some people live a lifestyle that protects that trauma because it's so hard.
Mm-hmm.
Because the only way you get through trauma is to walk through what makes you uncomfortable. That is
Mm-hmm.
the only way. Um, the I would say this: as a person works through trauma, and this is also a big deal that people have to understand. If you meet somebody that shares that they've gone through extreme trauma, also find out at what healing level are they on.
Mm-hmm.
And this is very important because trauma can dictate why you chose somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
When you heal, that person that you chose while you were still in the traumatic phase of your life may not appeal to you anymore. That's an
Wow.
aha moment that people don't realize. I picked you because my trauma said you're safe.
Right.
I picked you because my trauma said, and this is a big one, I don't feel I deserve anything better than you, so you're the best thing that's coming.
Mm-hmm.
But then once I heal, oh, wait a minute, there's nothing wrong with you. I know I deserve something different. And then now someone else is hurt. And you're hurt because they changed. No, you're hurt because they healed.
Mm-hmm.
As you're healing, it can hurt someone else if you're picking someone from the wrong space. I've been there too. I was a traumatized child for many years. So I realized a lot of my prior friendships and also people I dated or even married were they were the byproduct of how the trauma was showing up in my life. So to anyone listening, this is why trauma bonding is not really encouraged. And all that means is people bonding out of their own trauma, meaning we both have trauma. So we can be friends and we can understand each other and let's fall in love. No,
Mm-hmm.
that's you two having a safety net. But what if one of you actually decides to start healing? You may start to look at that person even deeper
Hmm.
or less deep because your trauma sits in the face or sits right in front of everything else that is authentically you. So now when the trauma starts to open up and the sun starts shining, and as soon as the sun shines, you see a little bit more on the ground than you did before. It's like, wow, I like you, but I think I love something else better because
Right.
now I know that I deserve that.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, how do we cope with so many deaths that are happening now from COVID, and it's like every week somebody else that we know is
Well,
dying.
it's that's very interesting because I heard you guys mention COVID. It'll take us years, because I'm a researcher. So it'll take us years to understand the full impact of the pandemic locally, in terms of your, household, in terms of your community, in terms of this country, in terms of the world, in terms of business. Because the pandemic, it was just a couple of years ago,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
and we're still feeling the fallout. But here's what happened in the pandemic: people who had to work 8 hours and they couldn't watch, but they couldn't watch the news during work. They couldn't be on YouTube on the computers because it's monitored. They couldn't be on TikTok. They couldn't be on Instagram because they had work to do. Guess what? You're at home from 8 to 5 typing, and you need some type of distraction. So guess what we do? We have our phones
Hmm.
next to us, and we're scanning social media. So, and I kind of say this like back in the day, and I think that we're of an older era. Back in the day, if somebody got killed in California, the only way you knew about it is if you turned on the news and it was newsworthy.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But usually in California, we don't hear about it unless it's noteworthy, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm in Texas, why would I hear about something in California?
Right.
Which begs the notion is that even with what we think is a rise in police brutality, it's not. It's just publicized. It was the same thing going on, but why is it on the news? There there was no reason, and
Right.
we had no cell phones, so there were not people capturing it and sharing it.
That's true.
Because what we're seeing is not something new, because they were always against this. It was like not brand new, and it's not this whole thing. Oh my God, it's increasing.
Hmm.
No, the visibility is increasing. So just think you're at home all day, you're typing all day, and you're working or whatever work it is. And as soon as you open your phone, 25 people on your timeline has shared the same video of
Yeah.
somebody getting killed, somebody,
Mm-hmm.
and then you're watching people actually record it and not intervening. So now it trains the other people psychologically now.
Hmm.
When I see something that is going on in my society, the first thing I do is pull out my phone instead of try to intervene. Or the first thing I pull out my phone, I hit record, but I don't hit 911. You recorded for 2 minutes, but you did not call 911. So my friend, possibly had a hand in either saving someone
Right.
or also helping them die.
Valuable
So
moments.
we have all these examples. So in COVID, everything was compact, and you had people who were staying at homes with spouses or mates who were who were also who were also, you know, not healthy. And I
True.
say that like it could be violence, it could be any other thing, but now I'm forced to be with you because work was my salvation.
Right.
Now I'm at home, or not even that, or just the stress of COVID made people more angry, more hostile,
Right.
because now I can't go and hang out. I can't go be social. I Because I didn't know that being social fed me in a way that now I don't even like myself at home. So how do I like you? Now parents have to find a way to help their kids cope with being homeschooled. Ain't nobody trained us to help our kids to be online. And I'm a college graduate. I still didn't understand how to do that.
Right.
And it happened all of a sudden. There
Right.
was really not a big warning. It was like a day or two, and bam, you're at home.
Right.
Now the stressor is, if you're low income, sometimes you hoped your kids would have breakfast and lunch at
Wow.
school. Now you got to make sure these kids eat 3 times a day. Oh, and guess what? You got to make the food while you're at home working, while they have to stay in class. So you see how all these stressors,
Yes.
and those are just some of them that we could talk about how it has impacted us now, and we're still trying to cope and deal as best as we can.
My
Wow. That's
question to
powerful.
you, with all the things in COVID, how has what is the rate of suicides during this time?
I don't have the specific numbers, but I will say black men between the ages of 18, I want to say 35 to 45, are one of the highest populations right now.
Okay.
Because we have to
Wow.
look at, being black, we have to wake up and actually know that we have to code switch. So once we leave home, we know that once we get in that car and we're at a red light and someone looks at us and they're white, for us psychologically, we don't know what they're thinking about us.
That's true.
So just imagine walking in the world every day, minute by minute, while you're outside, and you don't know what someone of another culture is thinking about you, or you don't know what this woman who you may like is thinking about you, because you have to think about it all day.
So
And then you
true.
wonder why black men are anxious. We're anxious because we've been taught. I'm from Louisiana. I was profiled as a young kid twice. So there is a part of me that consciously thinks, wait a minute, why am I thinking about why, about who I am?
Hmm.
I've done what I had to do, but I still have to do it.
Wow.
I just learned how to just be Cory as much as I can in the last year or two, and I love it. You know, because at times I have an accent because I'm from the South, and it's like, oh, I hear it. It's like, great. I'm glad you can hear where I'm from. So But also, black men have to deal with the pressures of also seeing all of that violence that is that is done against them, and they're seeing these clips over and over again. I was stopped recently, and it was just a warning. My son is 16 now, but I think he was 14, and he said, "Dad, um, Dad, are we going to be okay?" The fact that my son had to ask if we're going to be okay just to be pulled over bothered my soul, but
Yeah.
I understood it.
Yeah.
So I had to walk him through having to calm down from that. Because I was also nervous too, because I
Yeah.
didn't know what I was stopped for. And it was only for something very minor, but just that anxiety.
Yeah.
I got a question to ask you. Did you
Yeah,
did you change the way you talked when the officer came up?
mm-mm, no.
'Cause-
Um, I have no, I have no reason to.
yeah,
First of all, I'm highly educated. First of all, he does not validate me.
yeah,
I actually no one does anymore. So we have to understand what we allow things to influence our behaviors.
yeah.
True. That's true.
I
And
always,
think about it. This officer doesn't have a master's or a doctorate degree. So why am I going to change the way I talk?
yeah,
I know this that much for sure because you wouldn't be trying to pull me over. So why am I changing my voice?
yeah,
I'm Cory, Georgia. You are so and so. So I want you to speak the way you speak. Because me speaking any different would now, mind you, now the tone I speak in, because I have a natural way of speaking, and this is my everyday voice. So I don't have an angry tone or like a, like a tone that's pushy. I have a very even tone.
hmm,
So no, I didn't change. I just wanted to make sure I was compliant. And that's one of the biggest words with black men is that we're taught how to be compliant just to save our
yeah.
lives.
And I think sometimes because of my sense of humor, when I get pulled over, uh, I roll down my window, and I'll all of a sudden see that the officer's in trauma. So I first I say, good afternoon, officer. How can I help you?" You know what I'm saying? Because obviously you're in trauma because you had to come over and stop me. And the last time I got pulled over, and the officer called up, he said, "No, sir." He said, "I saw you pulled off the road, and I just wanted to make sure you're okay." I said, "Yeah, I didn't want to text it. I'm like, I didn't want to text and drive, so I figured I should pull over." He said, "That's a good decision." He said, "But maybe not on the curve of the freeway." and,
Right.
but the thing about it is that I had to learn to always be that just because you're being pulled over is not always a bad thing, or just because an officer speaks to you. But the compliant role is the sad thing is that we have to teach our young people that,
But
and
we
I
are
think we're the
compliant a lot
only,
of
but
times.
I think we're the
Yeah.
only culture, the black and brown culture is the only ones that literally have to teach their children that.
Yeah, and that's a disservice when we talk about empowerment. And I've always allowed my kids to have a voice. I was raised that way, so my kids are 19 and 16. We have wonderful conversations that I wish me and my friends could have. But then I also tell them, hey, listen, when you go outside my door, everybody doesn't love you like I do.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody doesn't see the greatness in you that I've helped you hone. So just to get home safely, if this happens, do A, B, C, and D. So it's like a short circuit. It's like I'm great until, and you teach them, oh, I'm great until,
Yeah.
and that still bothers my soul. I have friends of other cultures, so let's say white friends, and we've had a conversation. I said, I'm curious about the conversations you and your parents had growing up about about the world. And there was never a talk about, how to talk with police officers. There was never a talk about how you should sound,
Hmm.
how what does sounding, professional sound like? Because we have to understand that this country was founded on the principles of because we founded this is what we consider right and true.
Hmm.
So now when others have made it here, it was always it was always put up to the white test. And I also remind black people, who want to align with other people, we have not had laws that were there for us until we fought for it, until someone advocated.
True.
And it usually wasn't until there was a white alliance that helped us get it.
Hmm.
So please don't think that this country is really geared towards making sure we're good. The only reason why we are good in some spaces is because they were forced.
Right.
So we kind of have to force ourselves, to show up. This is not like, oh, it's it's because we love. It's because we're forced to do that. And then when the laws are made that should be right and just for the sake of humanity, some people still have a problem with being as humane as God also says. So that's why religion and spirituality for me are two different things.
Mm-hmm.
Because the Bible does not condone these things that folks are saying.
True.
There's stories about it. There's stories about it. But it doesn't say go ahead and do this to other people.
No, that's true.
And in fact, the Bible does not mention white people. So therefore, how did you get in power? So that's why sometimes having internal knowledge, even if you don't share it, empowers you on how you could show up because you've always had the power.
So let me ask you this question.
Wow.
In
Mhm.
looking at it, both Robert and I are educators. Your clientele, what's the age range of people that you work with, and are most of your clients African American, or are you just whosoever will let them come?
I've been blessed to have a wide range of experience. Currently, my caseload goes from pre-K 3 all the way to 60. I think my oldest client is 60. Um, Mostly, I want to say right now, 100% African American.
Okay.
Um, on the adult side, it's mostly Black men. On the children's side, it is actually probably mostly young boys.
Okay.
And in the daytime, I service um, the school system. And what I found is, based on the neighborhood that the school is located and the
Mm-hmm.
children are raised, their what shows up for them can be a little bit different.
Mm-hmm.
I work for I'm a contractor in the charter school system, and I've worked at three of their schools so far. And I'll tell you, every one of their schools, because it's in a different neighborhood, there's different types of things that show up. There's a different type of a behavior set. There's one area where I can walk in at 8:05 and everybody's off the hook. Like, wow, y'all, okay, y'all just woke up. Teachers, staff, and students. And I told the psychiatrist, I said, everybody here is trauma. There is some form of trauma happening, or someone's burned out. And when you're burned out, you don't have the capacity to show up in your best.
No.
You're tired already and you're highly irritable.
Mm-hmm.
If I hear the teacher yelling at 8:05 and I literally just got in the building, I'm like, I think she needs a vacation. It's too early.
Right.
It's too
Right.
early.
Right.
Or the kids are fighting at 8:15 in the hallway. These kids need some type of higher level of intervention. Because me seeing them once a week for a half hour ain't gonna cut it.
No, sir.
Yeah.
you know. And I also talk with teachers. Like if I'm working with a kid that has ADHD and I give him some skills of coping, I almost always go back to the teacher and say, hey, here's how you can not just help the student, but help yourself. Because once the student has means of coping, it will lower your stress level. Therefore, you can concentrate on the lesson
Mm-hmm.
being taught.
Mm-hmm.
Because a child with ADHD does, in most cases, need some accommodations. It doesn't mean you can't teach well,
Right.
and it doesn't mean the student can't learn well.
Mm-hmm.
It just means that that student for that type of presentation needs a certain type
Certain type.
of accommodation. And once we put that in place, because the brain is very interesting. So the brain goes to its most trusted way of handling things. That's why we have habits. Even your choices you make daily are habits.
Mm-hmm.
So when you make a new habit, your brain is growing a pathway, like it's physically growing a whole new pathway in your brain to say, oh, all this time I was doing A, so now as I do this B manually, it can become the new habit. So now when this happens, instead of A, I go to B.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why part of this is understanding that in order to get to a new space, so whether it's healing or whether it's functioning with ADHD, autism, or depression, or any of these things, I'm basically helping you building new pathways. And I love to tell people that because that empowers you to know that you can help your brain heal.
Mhm.
And that's a power that only you can do. I can't heal your brain, but if I offer you ways to do that and you can do that on your own, see, sometimes this therapy thing, well, because they call it therapy, I don't, is really about training you that your body is a wondrous thing. And if you believe that you're made in the image of God, then God did not make you broken.
Mm-hmm.
God didn't make you broken. Maybe it's the environment. Maybe it's some trauma in your childhood.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe your mother was smoking something while you were being, formed.
That's true.
Mm-hmm.
But even what looks broken, there is also ways to find out where he's put your surplus.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes we can't change what is not functioning best, right? But we can also look at, but you're great at this though.
Mm-hmm.
But what if you are 80% wonderful at this and this 20%, let's try to make it not matter as much to you personally because you have another asset here.
Mm-hmm.
Because because sometimes we make things matter what folks make matter.
That's true.
And so now we have to adopt all this. I mean, listen, I grew up as a stutterer. It was horrible. I
Me
was
too.
teased, I was bullied, I was beat up, I barely talked. But guess what I did though? I didn't realize that the other side of my brain, which was my creative side, I started writing at 7. I started writing at 7. I wrote my first songs and poetry at 7, but it was me escaping my trauma. So I was writing my fantasy worlds. It took a 10th grade teacher who didn't know that I was in the middle of a major depression because the person I was being raised by was a crack addict.
Wow.
My dad wasn't around. I I was 2 years out of a 6-year cycle of childhood rape in my family. So he didn't know this, but what he saw was that I was gifted in something. Till this day, if that man did not realize that I had a gift in writing and he created things in the classroom to make me write,
Hmm.
there was contests every day. He had my writings all over uh, um, on the border of his class. Then classmates would read my writing and turn them into well, and they would turn them into one act plays without knowing that I had a surplus in something else because that man saw that in me. I don't, I'm for certain I wouldn't be sitting here.
Yes.
So to
Wow.
go from all that to to go to school and to be I not the black sheep in the family because I don't like that word.
Hmm.
Because I tell people, what if you're just the beacon?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because either it's black or it's bright.
Mm-hmm.
It's black if people don't want to address the things that you want to talk about.
Hmm.
It's black if you don't want to talk about rape in the family
Mm-hmm.
done by other family members. That's the black part. But the beacon is I am talking about it. So
Yeah.
you decide it's black. I'm not going to actually call it black. I'm the beacon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
That's a
that's
good
part of
way.
my skill.
That's a good way to look at it.
So, with that all being said, because we can go on and on and on, if people wanted to receive your services or connect with you, how could they do that?
I have
Very
a
simple. You
question.
can go to CoryGeorge.com, CoryGeorge. But I spell it because most folks add an E to my name. You can go to Cory George Cares on both Twitter and Instagram, and you can reach me there. Unless you're talking crazy, I will respond to you.
Right.
Okay.
I have one question, and this has always puzzled me. In relations to people having nervous breakdowns and stuff, why is it always like nudity affiliated with it? Like they're found nude or they're walking down the street nude. And, I've known with numerous people that have had nervous breakdown. Why is the nude thing?
Well, I think that sometimes media actually makes it look like it's almost like suicide. In our heads, if we only go by media, we will look at suicide, it almost has to look drastic,
Right.
like it's a Law and Order. But the truth is, and this is why black men die and we don't know that they've ever thought it. First, once you actually decide that it's going to be suicide, instead of it just being a rash decision, but you thought about it, you're actually at peace. Most people are at peace because it's like, okay, I know the pain is going to be over, and suicide is not about death; it's about stopping pain. So
Wow.
going back to the breakdowns, I think it, I think it has to do with the psychological boundaries being so frayed that a person is out of touch with their own reality. And also, let's think about this: someone who is having a breakdown or someone who is having a psychosis, and their clothing may feel restrictive
Mm-hmm.
when they're trying to get out of their body or they're trying to get out of their feeling. Clothing may be restrictive,
Hmm.
and the reason why the breakdown may still be happening is because they can't get out of their body too.
Mm-hmm.
So the best thing that they can do is get out of their clothing. Um, and there's various ways that you can identify that,
Hmm.
but I found that like if I'm going through something, there's some things I need to shed because something's bothering me. I just need to get out the room, out the house. I need to go for a walk. But with people who may be dealing with the breakdown or some form of psychosis, it's more extreme than that. because they can't find space, and it may be because they're hearing voices. So now they're running down the street because they're trying to then escape the voices.
Gotcha.
Some people actually jump off of buildings, not because of suicide, but because they had a breakdown and they're trying to escape voices.
Mm-hmm.
And the only way to do that is, okay, now I got to jump because they're behind me.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That makes total sense, and I thank God for my parents as well, because I used to go to a speech pathologist as a kid, and and singing in church and stuff and traveling with
Mhm.
my father was my escape. So I can identify with you in that as well.
Yeah, and and one thing I would like to be very open about, back in the day, church and psychology were at odds.
Yep.
And I think it's only because the Bible did not mention specifically counseling and psychology, but it's all throughout the Bible.
Hmm.
We just have to understand the Bible was written when terms were not as available.
Right.
That's why the language looks like that. So if we look at the Bible and apply it now, God was always talking about doctors and psychologists and psychiatrists.
Hmm.
It just wasn't called that.
Right.
The
So, but
scriptures say,
also,
"Seek good counsel."
yeah, yeah. And see, when we hear counsel, I mean, it's there. But then when you say you want to go to a counselor, no, I'm gonna go pray on it. Oh, okay. But then seek good counsel for some people means strictly in the church.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-mm.
But God often talks about community and for all of us to actually bridge that gap. And lastly, there are a lot of churches uh, that do have mental health ministries. I have friends who practice, and their whole practice is spiritual counseling, whereas most of the clientele are people who are in the church and they need that familiarity.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And one of the things about it, being that I'm a counselor myself, is that we still want people to have the skill set and be professionally trained, but we also want to go to people that are also believers, because their counseling techniques combined with their spiritual beliefs are actually able to reach the people that they're getting. So I tell people all the time that mental health programs in the church are much needed, because there are certain things that spiritually, and I always look at it mind, body, and the spirit. You have to deal with each one of those realms to help people heal.
Hmm.
You know what I'm saying? And so you can't just be spiritual and don't deal with the mind or the mental or the physical, because
Right.
that makes you who you are, and that how you balance yourself out. But more than anything else, there's some things that are spiritual. I actually had a student that he would break down in class and would tear the whole class up, and then he would get into a fetal position, and then he would come out of it, and then he would put the class back together. And so one day they brought him to me, and they had him in handcuffs, and I said, uncuff him and just close the door. And when the young man got loose, the first thing that he did, that spirit that was on him, he went to go bite into an electrical cord, you
Jesus.
know, and I jerked it out the wall. And I told everybody, if you're not a believer, leave now, because this is a different type of counseling that's going to go on. And once we got rid of that spirit out of him, then we were able to counsel him in the other things. And so I tell people all the time that there's levels, and some levels that people are prepared for, and some levels they're not. But there's also the need for professional counselors and psychologists within the body of Christ, because there are things that we're dealing with that are even beyond spiritual things. Yeah.
Yeah, but also we're also teaching people how to use things that they've always known.
Yeah.
The people that have been in church for so and since you guys are in the church, and I want to share this whole phenomenon that happens with my older clients or clients who are adults and who are having issues reconciling things with their parents, right? Um, in terms of reconciling, oh, my parents did this, but if I don't honor them still, I'm going to go to hell. Um, they always tell me the popular verse, you know, honor thy mother and thy father,
Father,
and
Jesus.
on the days that be long. But I
Hmm.
said, and this is my God honest truth, 99% of the adults can't quote the passage right after because I never heard it in church. And I'll tell you what it is. Fathers, do not be quick to provoke
Provoke
your
your
son
children to
to
wrath.
anger. And I said,
Hmm.
if my only concern is, I said, if we follow the word, follow the whole paragraph,
The whole.
which means that your parents were actually responsible for your emotional well being because you can't know how to honor them until they teach you how to honor your own emotions. So I said, you holding yourself accountable for something that they were supposed to teach you. So I tell everybody, please read the word. I'm not a Bible thumper at all, but I know some things because I've had to do the research. So I said, why is that not popular? Why is that verse not popular? Because it's almost like that verse before that, the one we just said, it it could be a prison for some people.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I love my mom, but she hurt me.
Mm-hmm.
I, my dad beat me, but I still want to honor him. I still want to show up. My
Right.
mom abandoned me, but I still got to show up. I said, but how many times are you going to sacrifice and realize that that you're their child?
If they're
You're
the
their
adult.
child.
I
Mm-hmm.
always get tickled because of my child and the people around me. They remember, but provoke not, and they would have it quickly, and I would
Right.
laugh. I would laugh at that because we were a big proponent on read after. Because I tell people all the time, the Bible could mean what if you read the Bible, you can make the Bible say what you want it to say if you piecemeal it together.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? The Bible will tell you can write bad checks because it said it won't come back void. But there's a portion that said the word won't come back void.
The
But
word.
if you only say it won't come back void, then
You could
that's
take
why I
it.
could,
Mm-hmm.
so we can make the Bible say what we want it to say.
That's right.
But when we read the whole and not just in part,
The
we'll get
whole.
understanding. Well, my
Yeah, and
friend,
there's a difference between, and I tell people,
Mm-hmm.
for me, the one of the greatest parts about myself I love is that I'm in a beautiful space of self-awareness and emotional intelligence. But what that does for me is I sometimes go back and look at old issues that I thought I fully processed. And I said,
Mm-hmm.
oh, there's something left to juice out of this because I'm wise enough now.
Right.
So when we're talking about the words, sometimes if you read something five years ago and you've changed in a drastic way, but go read it again and see what it works for you now. Because isn't it going up against your not just the word, but it's going up against your value system, it's going up against your context of thinking at that time as
Mm-hmm.
well, too.
Mm-hmm.
So as we evolve, and that's why I talked about in a relationship, we should expect each other, to change and grow. And sometimes in that change and growth, we have to go back and apply that towards past instances as well. So the word may mean something more significant 5 years from now. Like, I missed that part.
Right.
Wow. Okay, because my eyes were, a bit clouded. I couldn't see all of the trees in the forest. Now that I'm wiser for me, not wiser for anybody else, but wiser for me. And that doesn't come from books. That comes from self. Because there's a lot of people on my level that, well, I won't use those words in public, but there are a lot of people that are in service with me that are high achieving because the mental context doesn't match the academic aptitude. Those are two different things. And people think that because you can pass a class and get a degree, you must be a great human being.
Right.
But no, we still commit murders. We still commit adultery. We still hurt ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
We still hurt our children. We still don't know how to talk to our parents. We still have faulty relationships.
Mm-hmm.
But the paper's on the wall. So for work 8 to 5, we've mastered the concept of showing up,
Functional.
functional. So my goal is to help people show up as authentically in all spaces. So the way if you hear me talk now, and if you walk by me in the airport, you'll know who I am because I'm going to sound just like this.
Right.
I'm gonna hug you because I know you. I have no qualms with it. And then so that's where the gap is. Is like we're now in a world where things matter more than people.
Wow.
What do you have to help me along? Oh, I have quite a bit. But how does it help you if you're not ready for it?
That's true.
well, man, we can continue on
Yes.
and on and
This is
on. We want to
amazing. Yes.
thank you for this opportunity
Yes.
to be able to have this conversation. Again, will you tell people how to contact you once again?
Yes, it's CoryGeorge.com or go to CoryGeorge.cares. I'm sorry, or go to Cory George Cares on Instagram and Twitter. If you see me on Instagram, but just send me a DM. I'm open with new clients. I see kids, I see adults, I see families. I specialize in trauma, ADHD, and a few other things. So yeah, so I look forward to talking again with you guys. And if there's any spaces I can serve you guys, but just let me know.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Cory George, right
Yes.
here on GOD Radio 1.
.com.